Hey there! Changing your guitar strings is one of the simplest ways to make sure that you're getting the best sound out of your instrument. Whether you snapped a G string while fingering a minor, or maybe you just want to try a different gauge of string, restringing your guitar is a basic skill that every guitarist should know. Strings, they wear out, they get dirty, rusty. Sometimes they just don't last as long as we wish they would. But changing them is relatively easy.
Before we begin, here are some tools you'll need, and a few that maybe you just want. String winder, aka speed winder, aka peg winder. I actually had to look this up on jimdunlop.com to make sure that I had the right name. Bridge pin puller. This is nice to have for acoustic guitars. Wire cutters. Needle nose pliers. Fretboard cleaner or guitar cleaning solution, and a microfiber cloth. A lot of these are optional. In fact, you can change your strings without a lot of this stuff. But the one thing that you can't skip on are your strings. In this case, I'm using regular Slinky strings made by Ernie Ball. I chose them because they're a basic mid-gauge nickel-wound steel string. Great for just about anything, but not necessarily ideal for certain specific niche purposes. For example, I also have some Pro Arte strings by D'Addario for my classical nylon string guitar, and a set of phosphor bronze wound acoustic strings for my 12-string guitar. When changing your strings, start by detuning your guitar. When the strings are stretched tight, they are full of elastic potential energy, and if they snap while fully tuned, they can do some serious damage. How do you think Harrison Ford got that scar on his chin? It was a car accident. Once detuned, save yourself some time and just go through with some wire cutters and clip all of those strings. Now that the strings are off, throw them away. With the old strings out of the way, this is a perfect time to clean your fretboard, or the whole guitar if you want. Now here you can see on each different string, there's a number on the front indicating the gauge in thousandths of an inch of each string. Electric guitars vary. If you have a tremolo arm, aka whammy bar, you'll likely need to feed your strings through the back of your guitar, unless it's a Les Paul or an SG, or well, there are a lot of exceptions. Most of the time, you'll feed your strings through the bottom of the saddle, across the bridge, along the fretboard, over the nut, and into your tuning posts. Some guitars have a string tree on the head to keep the strings in place. If your guitar has one, just slide the strings under while you're tightening. Pull your strings through the post until you have about a hand's width worth of play along the fretboard. Crimp the string at the top, loop it over, and hold tension on it as you wind it up. Once it's snug but not quite tight, repeat this process with the other strings. I like to have about 3 loops worth of string so that I have enough extra string to detune my guitar if necessary. If I have too much or too little string, the needle nose pliers are very helpful for gripping and adjusting the extra. While we're winding our strings, let's talk a little bit more about them. I referenced a classical string guitar and a 12-string guitar earlier. Let's start with the number of strings. 6-string guitar. This is your most common type of guitar, acoustic or electric. You could buy a real one at the Five and Dime back in 1969. 7-string guitar. These are rare. They're usually standard gauge plus one more heavy bass string at the bottom. 8-string guitars are extremely rare. When extra bass still isn't enough bass, think Swedish death metal. 12-string guitar. You don't hear these very often, but they have a beautiful harmony sound to them. They're basically a standard set of 6 strings, but paired with a second set, which is offset by 1 octave, except for the top 2, which are just duplicates. Most guitars are steel string. Usually it's a steel core wire that's been wrapped or plated with nickel or chrome for electric guitars, or bronze or copper wound steel strings for acoustic guitars. Steel strings are by far the most common found on acoustics and electrics. Another common material for strings is nylon. It's used in classic or classical guitars. These are rare. They're rather elastic and they tend to stretch a lot, so tuning can be a challenge. Stringing requires careful threading and twisting. Another feature is your gauge. On the package of a set of strings, you'll see a series of numbers. These indicate the diameter of the strings as measured in thousandths of an inch. Light gauges allow for a lot more dexterity. They allow easier bends, but they're a lot easier to lose their tuning or break. They're excellent for beginners. A lot of jazz guitarists use them. These and ultralights are my favorites. Heavy gauges allow for a chunkier sound, usually give more sustain, and they're generally used for deeper sounds with more bass, typically harder on your fingers as well. Heavy gauges are common among metal guitarists. Hybrid gauges are a combination of heavy gauge on the low end and light gauge on the high side. When tightening your strings, be careful because as you can see, my B string fell off the bridge as I was tightening it. So now I have to loosen it in order to get it back on the bridge. And you may be wondering, how often do I change my strings? Most sources, for instance, stringsandbeyond.com, hubguitar.com, among others, recommend every 3 months or 100 hours of playtime. D'Addario recommends changing them when they're not sounding or playing nicely anymore. In general, if they feel scratchy or rough, they're overdue for a change. If you play professionally, you should change them before every gig. But if you're playing professionally, congrats, good for you. Why are you even watching this video? Go have your guitar tech do it for you. That's what you pay them for. So now that you've got all your strings on, go ahead and use those wire cutters to clip off the loose ends. I always try to clip them as close to the post as possible. And be careful, because those wires are like little needles, and I've cut and stabbed myself on them dozens of times. When you're done, grab your tuner. It's time to tune your guitar. There are several different types of tuners. Some plug into the jack, some clip onto the head. Some guitars have one built into the body. I actually don't own a tuner anymore because Fender makes an outstanding app. In this video, I'm referencing their website, fender.com/online-guitar-tuner. Standard tuning is EADGBE. Once your guitar is tuned, you're going to want to immediately retune it because the tension of those strings will bend your neck and pull the strings a bit flat. You may need to do this a few times to get the tuning just right, but once your neck is fully under tension, your tuning should hold just fine. And that's it. You've changed your strings, you're ready to play.